Hello everyone, I hope you are well. On a cold April night in 1912, as icy Atlantic waters swallowed the most luxurious ship ever built, a handful of men in a dimly lit room in Washington, D.C. were already calculating what the disaster would mean not only in lives lost, but in power gained. The RMS Titanic has become a symbol of human arrogance, engineering triumph, and tragic loss. But behind the familiar images of the grand staircase and the fractured hull lies a far more complex and astonishing story. One that stretches from the coal mines of Pennsylvania to the banking houses of Manhattan, from immigrant neighborhoods in New York City to the corridors of the United States Senate. It is a story not only about a ship, but about an America on the brink of transformation. At the dawn of the 20th century, the United States was rising faster than any empire in modern history. Steel mills roared in Pittsburgh, oil derricks pumped in Texas, railroads stitched together a continent. Fortunes were made overnight, and the names Rockefeller, Carnegie, and Morgan became synonymous with wealth so vast it seemed almost mythic. Among these titans of industry stood John Pierpont Morgan, J.P. Morgan, a financier whose influence was so immense that he once personally bailed out the US government during the Panic of 1895. By 1907, when another financial crisis threatened to collapse the American economy, it was Morgan again who orchestrated private bank rescues to prevent total ruin. The episode terrified political leaders. How could a single private banker hold such power over a nation's fate? In response, secret conversations began about creating a central banking system. In 1910, on Jekyll Island off the coast of Georgia, a small group of powerful bankers and politicians met in secrecy to draft what would eventually become the Federal Reserve Act. Among those connected to these circles were men whose financial interests intertwined with international shipping lines, including the White Star Line, the company that built the Titanic. White Star was owned by the International Mercantile Marine Company, a trust assembled by J.P. Morgan in 1902. The aim was simple: dominate transatlantic shipping. The Titanic, launched in 1911 from Belfast's Harland and Wolff shipyard, was not just a passenger liner, it was a floating declaration of industrial supremacy. At 882 feet long and boasting electric elevators, Turkish baths, and a heated swimming pool, it represented the pinnacle of modern engineering. When Titanic departed Southampton on April 10, 1912, it carried more than 2,200 passengers and crew. Among them were some of the wealthiest Americans alive. John Jacob Astor IV, worth an estimated $87 million equivalent to billions today. Benjamin Guggenheim, heir to a mining empire. And Isidor Straus, co-owner of Macy's department store and a former US congressman. The ship also carried third-class immigrants, families from Ireland, Italy, Sweden, Lebanon, who saw America as a land of possibility. For them, Titanic was not luxury, but passage, a bridge between old hardship and new hope. 4 days into the voyage, at 11:40 p.m. on April 14th, Titanic struck an iceberg in the North Atlantic. The collision lasted mere seconds. The consequences would echo for generations. As freezing water poured into the ship's forward compartments, the crew scrambled to understand the damage. The ship had been declared practically unsinkable because of its watertight compartments. But the iceberg had sliced open multiple sections along the starboard side. The design could not withstand flooding across so many compartments simultaneously. Within hours, chaos overtook order. Lifeboats were lowered half-empty due to confusion and disbelief. Many passengers refused to board at first, unwilling to believe. The great ship could truly sink. The band played on deck in an effort to calm the crowd. Wealth and status, once shields of privilege, offered little protection against freezing water. By 2:20 a.m., Titanic broke apart and disappeared beneath the ocean's surface. More than 1,500 people died. The United States reacted with shock and fury. News spread quickly across newspapers from New York to San Francisco. How could the most advanced ship in the world vanish on its maiden voyage? Why were there lifeboats for barely half the people on board? Why had nearby ships failed to respond in time? The US Senate launched an immediate inquiry, led by Senator William Alden Smith of Michigan. For weeks, survivors testified in dramatic, public hearings. Captain Edward Smith had gone down with his ship. White Star executives were summoned. Bruce Ismay, chairman of White Star and a survivor, faced intense scrutiny and public outrage. The inquiry revealed uncomfortable truths. Outdated maritime safety regulations, insufficient lifeboats, ignored iceberg warnings, and a culture of overconfidence. The disaster directly led to the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, SOLAS, in 1914, mandating lifeboats for all passengers and 24-hour radio watch on ships. Yet Titanic's impact went beyond maritime reform. The deaths of powerful American businessmen shifted financial landscapes. Isidor Straus had opposed certain central banking policies. Benjamin Guggenheim's empire underwent restructuring. John Jacob Astor's fortune passed to heirs, altering investment directions. Meanwhile, the Federal Reserve Act passed in 1913, reshaping American finance permanently. Historians debate the degree of connection between these events. There is no definitive proof of conspiracy, yet the timing remains striking. Within 2 years of Titanic's sinking, the United States established the Federal Reserve, entered World War I, and emerged as a global financial superpower. But beyond speculation, the human dimension remains undeniable. In New York, the Carpathia, the rescue ship, arrived on April 18th, carrying survivors wrapped in borrowed clothing and shock. Crowds gathered at the docks under heavy rain. Some waited in hope, others in dread. Wealthy widows stepped onto American soil alongside penniless immigrants, united by trauma. One of the most haunting stories was that of Ida and Isidor Straus. Offered a seat in a lifeboat, Ida refused to leave her husband. "We have lived together for many years," she reportedly said. "Where you go, I go." They were last seen seated together on deck as the ship sank. Another survivor, Margaret Molly Brown of Denver, helped row lifeboats and raised funds for poorer passengers after rescue. She later became an advocate for labor rights and women's suffrage, embodying a new American spirit of reform. For the immigrant families who perished, their names filled pages of Ellis Island records. Entire futures vanished beneath the waves. Yet their story also fueled demands for safer travel and fairer treatment of third-class passengers. The wreck itself remained hidden for 73 years. In 1985, oceanographer Dr. Robert Ballard located Titanic, nearly 12,500 feet below the surface, using a remote-operated vehicle. The images stunned the world. The bow resting upright, railings intact, personal belongings scattered across the ocean floor like a frozen moment in time. Artifacts recovered from the site, china plates, leather shoes, handwritten letters, transformed Titanic from legend into tangible history. Exhibitions across the United States drew millions of visitors. The ship's story became embedded in American culture through books, documentaries, and ultimately James Cameron's 1997 film, which reignited global fascination and became one of the highest-grossing films of all time. Yet Titanic's true legacy may lie in what it revealed about America itself. In 1912, the United States was a nation of contradictions, immense wealth beside crushing poverty, technological genius paired with regulatory blindness. Titanic exposed the fragility of progress without foresight. It showed that innovation without safety can become catastrophe. It also highlighted social divisions. Survival rates differed dramatically by class. First-class female passengers had far greater survival odds than third-class men. These statistics forced Americans to confront uncomfortable realities about privilege and access. At the same time, stories of courage transcended class lines. Musicians who played until the end, engineers who remained below deck to keep power running, wireless operators who sent distress signals until water reached their feet. Their sacrifices embodied values Americans admired: duty, bravery, resilience. The decades that followed, the United States would face the Great Depression, 2 world wars, civil rights struggles, and technological revolutions. Each era echoed lessons first dramatized on Titanic. Unchecked optimism can blind leaders. Ordinary individuals can show extraordinary courage. Systems must evolve to protect human life. Today, more than a century later, Titanic rests silently in the Atlantic, slowly deteriorating under pressure and bacteria. Scientists estimate the wreck may largely collapse within decades. Time is reclaiming the steel and rivets once hailed as indestructible. But the story endures. It endures in maritime law, in financial institutions shaped during that era, in family, genealogies tracing ancestors lost or saved, in museums across America where children stand before recovered artifacts and imagine that cold April night. The Titanic was not merely a British ship that sank in international waters. It was a mirror reflecting America's ascent into modernity. It carried the dreams of immigrants, the power of industrialists, and the consequences of ambition. Its sinking marked the end of one age, the gilded confidence of the early 1900s, and foreshadowed the turbulence to come. Within 2 years, Europe would descend into World War I. Old empires would collapse. The United States would emerge transformed, financially centralized and globally influential.